Welcome to Public Safety Committee meeting. I'm joined by my colleague, Rashida Caldwell, Martin Nave, myself as the chair, and Councilor Corey Williams. Today, we are joined by Deputy Chief Shaw, and we are here to discuss drone usage and the software that runs the drone. And we are also here to just listen and be educated on the process of the drone, the management of drone, the usage of drone, and their applicability. So, Chief, you want to take it away? Yeah, come. Yeah, please.
Good morning, councilors. Thanks for allowing us to come in and do the presentation. Brought with me Sergeant Wells, who is going to be the direct supervisor for all the drone stuff. Now, if we get the drone as a first responder program, that's going to be his thing. And his supervisor is Lieutenant Williams, who is sitting there in the second row. We've presented this to the Data Surveillance Technology Committee. I've seen this before. I think a good place to start would be to have Sergeant Wells show you what he's put together here, and then we could answer some questions based on what you see. Does that sound okay?
That's good. Thank you.
So I threw together a few slides. These are just breaking down the 3 different programs that we're looking to purchase. The first one is Axon Air, powered by DroneSense. That is the main program that tracks all the flights. It logs all the data from every single flight. It will track all the pilots in the program. It will track their training. It'll track maintenance of all the UAS platforms, things of that nature. Anytime that there is a mission being flown, it notifies the administrators, which would be myself and Lieutenant Williams. It enables live streaming of any missions if we want to use that capability. The second program is Axon Air Remote. The remote program is an add-on that's necessary for the drone as a first responder program. The remote program allows us to remotely operate a stationary drone, which will be located like on a rooftop, most likely somewhere. So say, for example, we put it on the public safety building. A trained pilot will be able to log on to a computer, like a workstation inside of the PSB, and they'll be able to control a drone from that location, and they'll be able to fly it to a call. The next program on the list is MSAT, or Mobile Streaming and Tracking. This is a program that's necessary for our SWAT drones. Because of the type of drone they are, we're unable to upload the program onto their controllers. So it needs to be a separate program in order to enable the live streaming. So if we send one of the smaller SWAT drones in to clear a location, we'll be able to send that live stream back to a command post or a team leader on the SWAT team.
Before we get too much further, can you differentiate between the SWAT drones and their purpose and their missions, et cetera, and then kind of the larger program?
Yep. So the SWAT drones they're much smaller, so they're going to be easier to control inside of locations. So, for example, we're serving a search warrant, a high-risk warrant on a location with the SWAT team. These drones are smaller. The propeller blades are protected, so they can bump into things and not cause damage or get destroyed themselves. And being small, they're able to maneuver through tight spaces and clear the inside of structures. The other programs are going to be larger drones that are just exterior use only, so they'll be flying outside. Yep.
Is there special training for this?
Yes, sir. So the FAA requires a pilot certification, and then the department itself will be building a training program for the pilots to go through.
Will be?
Yes. I'm in the process of working on that now.
And how long have you used the SAT drone?
So we've
This is
done
going to be the first time.
Yep, we're looking to purchase it. We've done a trial period. I think it was for about a month. We had a trial period, and we did some testing with it.
Okay.
So, and we just tested the function of it, and it functioned as it should.
Okay. And you said its main purpose is if there's a SWAT task and mission that need to be accomplished, it would be accompanied by this.
Correct. It's designed to work with those drones. So it's not designed to work with the larger drones. That's what the other two programs are for. It's just the interior SWAT drones.
Okay. Okay. Other question before Sergeant continue?
For the interior SWAT drones,
Thank you.
how do you know like the height clearance if it goes inside a building and if it's flying too low where someone can possibly attack it per se?
Yep. So once you go indoors, there's no height requirement or anything by the FAA to follow. If somebody ends up inside the structure and they end up taking the drone down somehow and damaging it, then it's just something we'll deal with in that moment. We have spare drones that we can fly in if one goes down. So that would be our backup plan. Does that answer your question?
I guess, I mean, I'm just wondering like if it's going into a regular house, which it did a few weeks ago, right? And if just so happened someone was in there, you know, and they damaged it, what is the cost to us at that point? Because we don't know the ceiling heights once you're in a property, and it could be face level with someone. Of course, I know you would see it. You would see the person if it was face level. So at what point are you backing out at that point? Are you raising it higher at that point?
So it's going to depend. Everything's going to be situationally dependent with that. If they do start to try to take down the drone, they can fly away. And like I said, the drones are all, the propellers are all protected, so it won't injure anybody. There's actually a dome over the top of the drone that protects it. The cost of the drone is about $1,600 if we were to replace everything, including all the extra parts for it. But to replace the drone itself is probably about $500 to $800 if it's a total loss.
Right, and as far as the cameras on it, is it just forward? Like what's the sight view?
That one is forward, and it can tilt up and down. As far as like the width of it, I'm not sure the field of view off the top of my head on that.
Counselor, if I can just add one point, Brian Williams, Lieutenant, Syracuse Police. The reason we're sending the drones in before we send people in, obviously, it's a safety risk, right? Yes, I understand there is a risk that if the drone goes inside the building, it may be damaged by a suspect inside the building, but we feel it's much safer to have the drone damaged than to,
Absolutely.
So we send the drone in, get a good lay of the land, see if there's anybody inside, and if they are, what their capabilities are with weapons or how they've barricaded the apartment or whatever, and it's all geared around safety, all of it.
So if the officers pushed in the door, they step back and the drone take the lead, is that how it is?
Correct.
Okay.
The drone always goes in before the officer.
Okay.
Just to give us a lay of the land of what the cops are expected to look at when they get inside that apartment.
Okay. And is there regulation around how long it's supposed to be in there? And no. Okay.
One more question before you do move on, I'm sorry. And this is all based on what happened just a couple of weeks ago. What is the risk for possibly continued activity inside of a property? Well, I'll just say, a few weeks ago, a lady was attacking her family members, apparently, and it didn't seem to me like the drone was a speedy process. So in the event that the time delay from where our officers could have gone in versus the time frame that the drone did go in, there could have been possible loss of life or continued aggravated harassment or whatever was going on inside. What's the difference? Are we working those things out?
So,
Are either one of you two familiar with that call specifically?
yeah, it's all based on you got to remember we have our negotiators that respond to this too, and if they have an open line of communication with the folks, then going in is last right? I don't want to get too involved in tactics and what they do because I'm not a SWAT person, I'm not a negotiator. So, but I do know that if there's an open line of communication, this process can take a long time because the safest route for everybody is to get those folks to come outside on their own. That's the safest route. We use going in to get them as a very, very last resort for safety.
But that is, to be clear, that is an option, and I think that the threshold, put it quite simply, is if we think that there's imminent danger that somebody's about to be hurt, we're going in.
Chief, are there any of these issues, the drones, the video, are these shared with any other agencies?
Well, we're going to share the video with everybody, right? It's going to go up on our website, and everybody that wants to look at it is going to be able to look at it.
Because I'm concerned about.
Let me rephrase it. It's not the video, but the flights themselves.
Right, so I am concerned if some people feel their rights might be violated, any invasion of privacy, if there's other reasons, like for federal authorities, because we have a problem now going on where people who are immigrants or are Americans are fearing for their own privacy, that they may be threatened, that they might be gone after. Like you're a police officer, you have an incident, and then some who are not familiar with this might think you are a federal official trying to take away their rights or have them arrested, you know. So can you want to clarify that so we don't share it with federal agencies? We use it for its purpose.
So we won't be using the drone program for immigration enforcement at all.
Okay, thank you.
The drone as a first responder program will be responding to 911 calls.
Okay.
So they won't just be flying around looking for criminal activity.
Right.
It'll be a call coming into the 911 center, and that's what the drone will be responding to.
Can we, I guess, SWAT, one category, DFR, different category, right? First of all, Chief, you mentioned that the report was complete by the surveillance working group. Is that available?
I'm pardon?
Is that report available to the council?
It's got to go to the mayor yet, so I can check with Nico Diaz and see exactly where it stands and get back to the council on that.
I guess.
It's close. I don't know.
From our perspective, you're asking us to vote on an item in an hour, and we haven't had access to the report that came from individuals in your organization and other community leaders that are supposedly experts on the topic, correct? So how can we make that vote without all the information?
You have a good point, but that process is out of my control, and we're kind of up against it for the grant. I mean, we can testify to what the program is going to be and all the safeguards that have been built into it. We've been working with the Data Surveillance Technology Committee, and I am a member. Almost everything that they requested for safeguards we agreed to. The one thing that we pushed back a little bit on is they wanted to limit some of the calls we could go on. In other words, there seemed to be a pretty big push on not going on low-level calls, but the low-level calls are where we see the most value, right? There's an argument in the street, so-and-so, you know, cops might not get sent to that for a while. We can send the drone as a first responder out right away. There's no fight, there's no argument, or there is a fight and an argument, changes the priority or clears the call. So that's kind of the only thing we really pushed back on with the Surveillance Technology Committee's recommendations.
Again, I'm having a hard time just not knowing any of that, right? Like I've got a whole sheet worth of questions that I imagine could probably be answered by that report, and I have a hard time moving forward with an item with this asymmetry of information, right? You know, written down I've got, you know, where is it going, why is it going, and when does the camera turn itself on? How do we, I guess, how do you as a department answer those questions, and what are your policies and procedures related to what are the calls, you know, why are they going, and when does the camera turn on?
So we have a draft policy, and I could do my best to get you a copy of that before the council session today. Just draft format only. We got to kick it around the chief's office a little bit, but essentially that's what the policy is going to be.
Is it a part of this presentation?
No, because it's draft. We didn't want it to get out public until it's finalized.
What, I guess, again, they're asking us to vote on a draft policy. how do we know that after a vote moves forward, there won't be additional changes to that policy?
So, like, I think you touched on it, Counselor. At least we have 3 different things, or 2 of them are existing programs. It's just software to continue it. The only one additional thing we're requesting for is the drone as a first responder one, which is, I think, item 17. So,
And that one's my concern at this point, given where we are with the infancy of the program and not having all the information before authorizing purchase of software.
we'll do it. I'll get you the draft policy.
And,
So
you know,
get out of here.
appreciate it. But, you know, what I'm thinking about is our national context, right? And we're seeing the erosion of constitutional protections nationwide. And I want to make sure that we, at the local level, can do everything to protect the rights of our citizens that we can.
Makes sense.
Other question before? All right. Continue with the presentation.
Sure. So this first slide is just going along with what I started with. The main program, it logs all the flights and the data for each flight, enables the streaming and sharing between agencies, tracks the pilots, their trainings, the maintenance for all the UAS platforms, notifies the administrators of their flights, and this is where the flights will be migrated onto a public website, so the public can be aware of all the flights that the DFR program is running.
And what information is being collected compared to what information is being shared publicly?
And I'll show you that here in just a second. So this is what the main dashboard looks like when I enter the program. As an administrator, it shows me all of the flights. So this is back from September. You can see there's ATV details. There's DR numbers attached to it where officers flew in for a call. And this isn't a DFR program yet. These are just a few of the drones that we have out to officers now. Some are SWAT, some are our emergency management drone. Our emergency management drone, for example, is the one we use for the ATV details. This is all the data that is shown of each flight. So you can see the dates, the flight duration going across the top, left to right, the location it took off from, distance traveled, max altitude, okay, and then in the notes section there, we add the call type and what the flight was for, just a brief description of that. So this was a potential stolen vehicle, and there were some individuals moving around with what they believed was a stolen vehicle, and they thought that they potentially were armed because they were, I believe they were going into their front pouch pocket on a hooded sweatshirt. So you see the thumbnail there, that shows the actual flight, the blue line, that shows like where the drone traveled. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, right here. So you see like where the drone traveled here. And this is over the Skunk City area. It's that green area in Skunk City. And 122 Lower Ave in the bottom right-hand corner.
I think bring it back to the screen, the pointer. I think
Yep.
there you go. There you go.
It's not lighting up that bottom corner for some reason, but.
All right. And Sergeant, please, I'm looking a lot up there. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. I'm reading the note, which has a detailed description of the call. Is there a larger category to quickly aggregate data? Like I work in the city schools. I work in a data world. And, you know, when I get a description like that, it's hard to be able to say, well, we had these 3 that were kind of similar, right? Due to the detailed nature. Is there like a higher level category like, you know, weapon or vehicle or, you know, something like that to quickly for, you know, potentially our role in oversight down the line and your role in monitoring the integrity of the program, be able to quickly say, you know, we had 1,000 flights, 400 went to this purpose, 200 went to that purpose, another 100 went over here.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure the answer is yes. I'm just not seeing it here unless you're directing my
Publishing
eyes.
that data, at least annually. We're kind of kicking around now. It's going to be quarterly or annually of, you know, how many flights and what the purpose of the flights were. something that will go in our annual report for everybody to see as well.
Yep.
So
And
on the notes, you see where it says miscellaneous right here. That's how that call was categorized by the officers on the scene. And up in the top left corner above the thumbnail picture here is the DR number. So if you want further information or further notes through the 911 center as to how the call was generated, you can get more information by checking the DR number there.
will the public have the note available to them?
I'm not 100% sure on how that looks when it's migrated over. I know that the flight data, like the time of day, the location, the duration, and this thumbnail picture that shows where the drone traveled, I know that information's there. I'm not 100% on if the notes are included in that.
And you can see where I'm going. It's
Sure.
the relationship between accountability, transparency, and civil liberties. And
Yes, sir.
part of it is making sure that we as a council are comfortable with that relationship, and that you as a department providing us with evidence that you've thought about that relationship, and then in the end being able to justify to the citizens, the residents of our city, here is a tool, we're using it, here's why we're using it, and here are the safeguards.
Yes, sir.
One thing I'd like to point out is that one of the things that the Surveillance Technology Committee wanted us to do was to only turn the cameras on towards the end of the flight. We pushed back on it saying we want the cameras on for the entire flight, so if somebody has any questions about what we were looking at while we were en route or what we did while we were on that flight, it's all can be pulled up and shown to the public.
And I think the trade-off there is if you turn it on earlier, you're capturing footage of a large number of individuals that are not involved in the incident.
You are capturing more data, but once again, we're not out there looking for additional things. We're going for a specific purpose. I think that having the cameras on the entire time gives you transparency of, no, we didn't go by that house, no, we didn't go by that park. This is exactly what we did. Not only is it drawn on a thumbnail, but you can go back and view the video and see what we actually saw.
So I have a question kind of related to that. Will the drones have any like distinct markings, reflectors or color, so that on Nextdoor app, people aren't like, why was the police spying in my backyard? And it really was like the teen down the street type thing. So we're not receiving like 1,000 phone calls. And how will we be able to discern your drones from everyone else's drones?
To be honest with how high they'll be up in the air, I don't know if anybody would be able to see any markings on it. They will have lights, flashing lights on them, white lights, red and green lights for navigation lights. We're planning on putting police markings on them in case they're on the ground. People can see that they're a police drone. But when they're up in the air, 200, 300 feet, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the drones, to be honest with you.
This screen right here, this is just for your own access, or can somebody in public see this?
So part of this information will be migrated to a public website when we get it set up.
When is there a timeline?
We don't have a set time on that yet. That's something that Axon has said they can set up for us.
Okay, once the software is authorized.
Yep. It's part of the program, is my understanding.
And we'll have this up and running before we launch the program.
And within the draft policy or the draft procedures, what is the frequency of publication also included in that, or how frequent the data is going to be shared and stuff like that?
No, I don't believe that's outlined. My understanding is that in my conversations with the Axon reps, it just automatically occurs. So when a flight happens, it gets automatically uploaded to the website. It's something that's done through Axon, is my understanding. And I don't have to go in and make any of the calls move over to the website. It does it automatically. And
Can we, before the voting session today, make sure that, in terms of public consumption of the data and the information, can we make sure that we have something in terms of the frequency, how quickly can this information be available to the public? I think if there, to Councilor Williams' point, if there is that outline and which will elicit expectation of when to get this information, I think it will make us a little bit comfortable and will give public an opportunity to look forward to a level of transparency of data and sharing of data that they can look forward to.
This is what we're talking about, was like within 24 hours, but that would be too consuming, but then within days anyways at the most.
I'm not sure, sir. Based on my conversation with Axon, I believe it's going to be immediate. Like when the flight's done, that information will get migrated onto the website. But I can reach out to one of them today and get an answer for sure on that.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
As far as flight path, is there a possibility of, like you have that little dot, and instead of showing a complete on the website, a complete travel route, having the dot move from where it started to where it was going, and then it shows the activity.
Yes.
Is that a possibility versus putting all of the complete flight route online? I know
Yes.
you guys will have it on the backside, but
Yeah,
is
so
there a
we-
way to tweak that a little?
Yep. So we won't be posting the actual video, like the recorded video of
Okay.
an incident. But what this does is in the bottom corner of this thumbnail here, it says view and replay.
I can't see, I'm blind. Oh, okay.
So if I click on that, it brings up a replay of the flight. That replay of the flight it's a drone overlaid on like a Google Earth map.
Oh, okay.
So then it'll show the drone flying its exact flight path that it flew.
Okay. So
and
it's not
the-
actual footage?
Correct. And the other benefit of that view and replay mode is that it'll show a crosshair of where the camera was pointed. So, for example, the reason why I have this program set up like this, where the DR number is up in the top left corner and then the officers are instructed to add the notes, is my checks and balances with the program. If I get a complaint, somebody calls in, hey, I think your police drone was spying on me in my backyard. I can pull up this information. I can pull up the notes of the call from the 911 center. I can see what the call was for, the basis of it. I can hit view and replay. I can watch the flight of the drone. I can see the altitude. I can see everything that the pilot was looking at. And if they recorded it, if whatever recording there is, I can go back and look at that and I can see exactly what they were looking at. So that's part of my checks and balances. Should somebody call in thinking that they're spying on them because there's a drone over them, and like I said before, with how high the drones fly, you can't tell what the camera's looking at. So this will be able to tell me exactly what they were looking at.
I was going to say, the DFR program had an opportunity for public comment. What did we hear from the public?
Nico has a whole sheet of the comments broken down. I think they're available online as well. It was concerns that you would expect from people that don't understand what the program is, and there was a lot of negative comments. To your point, before we roll it out, we will be doing a public education engagement period, because I think that when somebody sees what we're actually doing, what the program's used for, it assuages a lot of fears. When we got done with the committee, who was very careful and protective of civil liberties, that flew through there. Almost everybody felt that their fears were assuaged.
So with drone being sent out, who make that call? Beside you hear a case from 911 coming in. Mm-hmm. Who make a decision whether to send out a drone or not? Is it you as a sergeant or the lieutenant?
So that'll be the pilot.
The pilot.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's their ranking? The pilot.
They can be an officer. They can be a sergeant. It doesn't matter the rank necessarily. They're a certified pilot, so they're certified to operate.
So the officer decide whether to send in a drone or not.
Correct.
Based on our policy, though.
If there's a certain call type that we're not supposed to go on per policy, then they won't fly it.
How many pilots do you have, and how often will they be working, like shift-wise?
We haven't ironed out all of that yet, but we're thinking of starting like 4-hour blocks, a couple days a week during the busiest hours, so we can try to have the most impact with it.
What I would like to do is once we acquire the software, I want to have another meeting to really talk about the outline of all of this, because I think the sensitivity of this program, it need to be really scrutinized. And I know we are at a very sensitive timeline, but I think as we hear from you, there's not much clarity in terms of what direction, and because you guys are trying to figure it out too. And I think the more we stay close and be transparent, I think that will build confidence among these body with you as well and the public. So let's continue with the present order. Council, do you have other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Okay.
Chief, what about if you had to take the drone out, right? And say you were watching someone, maybe you thought, this person had a gun, issue. Do we have, like in other counties, have we partnered up or like if it had to leave Onondaga County, what would that happen? Syracuse shares this area. What happens when it leaves, goes to DeWitt or anything like that?
I didn't follow.
So if there was a situation and it was like we had a car, right? And you were following this car to see where it go. Once it leaves this area, Syracuse area, do we have any kind of relationship, or did we set up some kind of with DeWitt and solve it, other
Municipality.
municipalities around?
Sure if the drones will fly far enough. You probably answer the specifics. So we're not going to be going too far out of the city, plus the battery life. But one of the recommendations that the Surveillance Technology Committee is made is that we don't share our data with other agencies.
I think she's asking, do we have permission
To go.
to go outside of the city lines?
Oh, that was a pilot question.
In reference to the drone as a first responder, the FAA limits us to 2 miles from where that drone is. And we have to have a visual observer, a person looking at the drone to deconflict with manned aircraft. So 2 miles is the limit we can go. For example, if we had one on the public safety building, on the roof there, that drone legally can only fly 2 miles from that drone, or from the launch point. So it's not like we can't fly it from here to DeWitt.
Gotcha.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, I had a question. Do we have helicopters, Syracuse Police?
We used to have a helicopter, but that's been down for a long time. The Sheriff's Department has a helicopter, and I believe that was up Friday for the ATV motorcycle detail, which generates a lot of phone calls, a lot of public concerns. I know that when I hear that thing flying around my house, my first, what's going on, right?
Well, we've seen helicopters, and maybe not recently, but they would have the floodlights on. And I'm just wondering if they are controlling drone operations from the helicopter going in certain areas, and we don't see a crime being committed, and we're concerned about that.
Yes,
especially when you get closer.
we don't have the helicopters. Sheriffs and state police also have helicopters, and I'm not
But would
aware
they
of
use
flying
those
drones.
to control those drones at all?
I'm not aware of anything like
Not,
that.
so they won't, okay, so state police, county sheriffs, they're gonna have nothing to do with our drones. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess want to just further talk about the 2-mile flight path. So if it's just a 2-mile flight path, are we having drones in different areas that they'll already be in a place where they have that flight path available?
Ultimately, if this plan is successful after we implement one drone in one area, and that location is yet to be determined, where we're going to start the first drone for the DFR. Ultimately, we'd like to have 4 to 5 of them set up throughout the city so we get a good coverage of most of the city.
Okay.
So that's the ultimate goal. Right now, we're going to start with one and then maybe add a second and see how that goes in, crawl, walk, run.
I think that evolution is something that worries me a little bit too. One to many. And when we think about technology and the proliferation of technology, currently DFR, we've got a camera, right? Do they have microphones?
No, sir.
Infrared.
Yes, sir. Some of them do.
Some of them do. Facial rec.
No, sir.
License plate reading ability.
Other than what you would see on the camera.
Yeah. And so if we move forward with this, does mission creep occur? Or not mission creep necessarily, but, the evolution of the program to then the fact that we are layering these additional technologies on top of it.
So to be quite frank with you, I think that's how we wound up here, right? Like, we've had drones and they were grandfathered in, but the drone as a first responder was brought up as new technology, even though we originally looked at it, it's just more drones, but we had to go back to the technology committee because of perceived mission creep.
Something just to give you a perspective, when I first started with the police department, we were just starting to implement the cops cameras. And I remember the community was, kind of up in arms about it. They didn't want surveillance in their neighborhoods. It was a matter of years until it seemed like everybody wanted them in their neighborhood because they were solving crimes. That's how I foresee the drone program going forward, if you were asking my opinion. There's a lot of case law already out there established on surveillance. We plan on following that established case law. And like I said before, they're flying to 911 calls. We will not be conducting random surveillance with them. If we get a 911 call that we're going to fly to, the camera's going to be on the horizon to make sure we don't crash into anything until we get to the call. And then that's when we'll be looking down to try to, handle the call and make that call run more efficiently. Once we're done, we fly back to the docking station, start recharging, upload any video or information we need to into the system. Another thing to keep in mind as well is that the drones have a limited flight time. It's about 30 minutes roughly. So if we're wasting time flying around hoping we find something happening, then when something serious does go out, like a shooting or a stabbing, robbery, that sort of thing, we may not have the battery to fly to it and be effective on that call. So we do have to be judicious in how we choose to fly the drones.
And we think we're going to get the most benefit from the low-level calls that we didn't have to send officers. People have been waiting hours and hours. Currently, they're waiting long times, depending on the day and all that, for a police response, where if we can minimize the calls we're even going to because they're no longer there, they've moved on, or it's not even true, it's going to increase, we hope to reduce response time and save some police officer man hours.
And I'm sorry, I was just a few minutes late. So as far as those low-level calls, is there a description of what those will be? Like, this is the only thing they go out to? Like a car accident. Do we send a drone out to a car accident? Like, what
So that would be one
constitutes
you
a
would want
low-level?
to, you might want to send one to, because a lot of times people will exchange information and then leave.
Yeah.
It's everything's situation dependent. But the low-level ones are, like I'm saying, is where we think we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck. Although we are going to want them on big things like burglaries and progress. And
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering what constitutes a low-level drone situation.
I don't know if that's worked into the policy because I haven't seen it yet, but we can get you a list of our priority calls and how they're laid out.
The calls that make the most sense as far as these low-level calls that we can clear with a drone, most likely are going to be non-criminal, and they're not going to have what we call an 85, which is somebody that an officer can meet with at that location, right? Because if somebody wants to meet with an officer, then we can't send a drone because the drone can't talk to people, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's a call where nobody wants to meet, and for example, myself and Lieutenant Williams were flying an ATV detail one day, and there was a gentleman that was jumping in and out of traffic, right? So it was a traffic complaint, very low level, nothing really criminal. We were able to fly to the area and establish that it was a gentleman begging for money at an intersection. At the time we showed up, he was sitting on the corner again, and we were able to establish that he was probably just moving between the vehicles to collect any money he could. That was no longer a problem, and there was nobody that wanted to meet with an officer, so we were able to clear that call without having to send an officer. So that's an example of the potential time savings that we were able to do in testing, essentially.
So far, how often do you use it on average, say a day? How often Is it regular?
We don't have set times. If there's a detail that comes up, like an ATV detail, we get a nice day, nice weather, when you know the dirt bikes and ATVs are gonna be out, we might plan to fly on a day like that. Otherwise, it's kind of as needed, right? If there's a SWAT call out, we might go fly. So it's not every day. Some days it's, multiple times a day, but then we'll go several days without flying.
But if we get the drone as a first responder up and running, it'd be a lot more frequent than that. The whole idea is to save as many calls as we can. Like the sergeant had mentioned earlier, we'd start with busy days and busy times. And every police officer can't do this. You need a license, which is a lengthy process to get.
All right. Other question before we continue? Go ahead.
So this is a short video to show you the remote program. I'm not sure how to make it work.
They have to have a YouTube account.
While that's going on, what is the, because you stated that the drone would be so high in the air, like people wouldn't technically see it. What is that height level?
So the maximum height that a drone can fly right now is 400 feet, and that's established by the FAA. That's maximum. There are some areas in the city that are restricted even more than that. When you get around University Hospital or St. Joe's because of their helipad, or there's there's other critical infrastructure where there's limitations on it. Some areas of the city have 0 feet. So unless there's an emergency, even law enforcement can't fly there. Only under an emergency situation. Any recreational flyer would never be able to fly there. So there's all sorts of criteria that's established by the FAA.
So going back to while this is getting figured out, going back to the 2-mile radius that you can fly it. So if the drone is at the PSB and the crime is happening, say, around Southwest area, say as far as Strathmore neighborhood, for example, that's more than 2 miles. How would you get a drone there?
Well, we'd either have to do what we're doing now if we really felt it was imperative to have a drone there, which is I have a drone in my vehicle at all times. So I could just drive to that area and put the drone up.
Put it up.
Right,
Okay.
but 2 miles is something that's built in. That's the farthest that the FAA will allow people to go at this time. And they're always examining case studies and safety studies and expanding on that slightly. But right now it's currently set at 2 miles, and that's built into our certificate of authorization by the FAA. So we have COAs that
So
restrict.
the loophole is you would drive closer and then release the drone from there to stay within?
Well, I wouldn't consider it a loophole. We're talking about two totally different things, right? We have the drone as a first responder program versus what we're using drones for right now. What we're using drones for right now is people have them in their vehicles, and if they go to a call where a drone is necessary to get an aerial overview of the situation, we launch a drone. That we're going to continue to do. The drone as a first responder is a stationary unit used for responding to 911 calls. That's where the 2 mile limitation is.
Oh, okay.
Just another point I want to add when we're talking about response time and clearing low-level calls. If you look at the statistics nationwide for organizations that have a drone as a first responder program, the number is right around 30% of calls that patrol doesn't even have to go to anymore, that the drones are going and clearing those calls. So it's about 30%. So on a day where staffing struggles, we're in a time where recruitment is down, patrol's having a hard enough time responding to the calls as they are. That's a main factor in us trying to go for this drone as a first responder program is the elimination of even sending patrol to some of these calls.
I want to, while we are waiting for this, I want to also shift a little bit in terms of the other same-size municipalities that may also use this. Do we have those examples that
Well,
we
one,
may use as a model?
yeah, most people, Chula Vista in California was one of the first departments in the country to establish a drone as a first responder program, and they were so successful with it. I think that's really the model that everyone strives to go for. And all their information is exactly what we're talking about here. They have a public-facing website. That's our plan as well. Be completely transparent with all of this. We're not trying to hide anything. Most people are trying to emulate what Chula Vista did because they were so successful at it.
What about here in New York? Any
I'm not sure of any in New York, to be honest with you. I know there are people that are in the process like we are, but I'm not sure of any agency in New York that has this up and running yet. There's a lot that are going for it, but not many that have it.
what city in California is that?
It's Chula Vista.
Chula Vista.
Yeah.
So, Lieutenant, in terms of training, is it just Part 107 or is there additional law enforcement training?
Currently, it's just Part 107 because the people that started the drone program are the only pilots right now. We have some on the SWAT team, but they train every single week. Sergeant Wells and I fly frequently, right? We are developing, especially for this drone as a first responder program, a training regiment that we're going to send everyone through. Any of the new pilots that are going through, they're going to get their Part 107, and then they're going to come through a couple days of training with us as well before they will give the blessing to go ahead and fly.
And that training developed internally. Is there an outside entity that trains for law enforcement?
Yeah, there are federal training programs that we're building our program off of. We're emulating basically what they do. There are trainer courses that I think Sergeant Wells is going to try to go to at some point. But there's nothing that says nationally or throughout the state that you should have this training program. You don't even need it. Part 107 is the only. In fact, if they're flying under our code, they don't even really need the pilot's license. We go above and beyond and we mandate. Anybody that's flying for the police department has at least their Part 107. So they've gone through the FAA training and they know what you can and can't do with the drone before we even think about giving them a controller. They, at minimum right now, get the Part 107. We are also implementing a new training program that they will all have to go through.
Does the drone have, similar to the body-worn cameras, like, I don't know if we enacted that other thing, like if once you draw something, it turns the camera on? Did that ever happen?
I don't think so, not yet.
Okay.
No, with the drones, you would have to manually hit record, and that's why we're building that into part of our training program. And if they're going to be a DFR pilot, this is how you take off, and immediately hit start recording.
Okay.
So that's on all a manual operation.
How many do we have? How many have we bought drones?
Drones?
Yeah.
All the drones all together, or
It's the first responder drone.
one so far?
Just one.
We should just have that email to us.
The videos we're trying to pull up are, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Do you want to unmute it in the top left? Can you unmute it in the top left? Thank you. No, doesn't sound like there's sound.
Say it again.
Hit the CC, maybe we could read it.
Secondary box you gotta click.
So basically, it's in like some type of protective box,
Yep.
and those boxes will be set in different areas so that they'll be ready to go.
Correct.
And we have one now. How many are we looking to?
We'll have two eventually, like one for wherever we decide to put it, and one as a backup in case we have any kind of mechanical issues with it.
We could always email this like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's
The
do that.
videos are just showing more of what we've already spoken about, really.
Would that be the end of your presentation, or you have more?
No, but there was two videos that just show the remote program and the MSAT program, and they just show how they function, so you could actually see a visual representation of it versus just us talking about it.
Right. And I think part of our concern here is having some sort of an outline framework of how this will work.
I'll get you the policy, the draft policy.
And then we want to stay on it to really firm it up as we go. But we understand that we are on a strict deadline to apply and get the software. But as we will have more meetings to kind of figure out the policy side of things and then the management of the drone. Because as you can see here, as counselors are a little bit concerned about that, or more concerned about that, and the same to public. And we want to make sure that we find a common place where there's a level of comfort for all. Okay, so we'll set up another meeting specifically for policy. Okay, soon. Okay.
Sir?
I'm gone this week, but next week, hopefully our policies will be finalized, and it'll
Yeah.
be a good time to do it.
We'll work with Nathan to make sure that meeting is up next week before. Okay. Any other questions, councilors?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Lieutenant Sergeant. Thank you. Thank you all. That will conclude our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So you guys have the VFR draft policy that went to Terry? Can you send that?